If you're anything like me, you've made a ton of mistakes in your photography over the years. Mistakes in exposure, mistakes in composition, mistakes in editing. But I find the biggest mistakes that I ever make are photography tips or rules that I got from other people. Let's talk about it. So I've come to Hilton Falls today with basically no plan. There's woodland, waterfalls, but that's about it. I don't really have a good idea about what kind of shots that I might want and haven't planned out any compositions, nothing like that. But it's a really good time to talk about resetting and thinking about things differently, letting go of some of your preconceived notions about how you're supposed to do photography. This is an example of something I used to get wrong all the time, which is I'm trying to get my composition exactly right the way that I'm probably going to end up with it right in camera. And that creates a problem. I've got this great subject here, which is this beautiful sort of small tree growing within the boughs of some other tree, and it looks really quite beautiful. And to see it with any detail on my monitor, I've zoomed all the way into 400 millimeter. But that's going to create a problem for me when I'm editing later on, which is that this scene is probably too intimate, it's probably too tight, and I'm going to want options. And I got lots of megapixels. It's not going to be a problem for me to crop in. Cropping is what I'm going to do. So what I need to do is zoom out, and not just a little bit. I'm going to take this 400 millimeters all the way to around 200 millimeter in order to take this shot with enough scenery around it to really tell the story. So the thing that I'm doing wrong here is that I'm forgetting that I'm going to crop the photo. I'm forgetting that I can crop the photo, and I'm sort of looking at this image in the camera, and I'm not thinking about the processes that are going to happen afterwards to make it into something that I'm going to want. So I've decided to retake a composition that I've taken just once before because there was a problem the last time I took this photo, which is the light was wrong and I wasn't paying attention to what the light was doing. I'll put that photo up on the screen now and talk through it, which is, if you look at it, you've got this nice dappled light, but there's just so much going on in the composition in terms of the foreground, all these roots, and there's just a lot of detail, and the light actually adds to the complication and really subtracts from the photo, because I wasn't really paying attention to what the light was doing with my composition. I was just thinking, oh, this is some nice light, so I'll get this photo, looking at the elements of the photo and thinking that was the composition. But truly, the light is part of the composition, and I think a lot of people forget about that. They think, let me get some gorgeous light on my composition, when really the light is part of what you're trying to take a photo of. This composition I find very interesting. It's all about the leading lines of these roots that sort of lead up to this little space of tree. And you're left a little to the imagination of what's above there, and definitely the dark foreground here and the very lit background do a lot to sort of call out the fact that this is a hill and there's rocks and there's these beautiful trees, and it just sort of comes all together. When I showed my other composition to people, I could tell that they weren't responding the way that I thought that they would. So hopefully if I take it this time and get the lighting right, it might look a little bit better and help sort of tell the story that I'm trying to tell about these trees and the roots that they have. Well, I've come to this pretty beautiful scene, and it is gorgeous, but I know already that it's definitely not going to make it into my portfolio, and it's not going to be anybody's favorite. but it's a good shot anyways. And it leads me to talk about this problem that a lot of landscape photographers have, that the landscape photography community really has, which is prioritizing these perfect shots. And there are a few different aspects to this. The one that's particularly annoying to me are these like made for landscape photography zoom lenses that have f2.8, an aperture that I'm never gonna shoot at in the field. Now, I have a couple of G lenses. I've got a G Master lens, and they're all really good lenses, but one of the things I've prioritized on them is price. The other is weight, and I care a lot more about that than I do about getting this like wide open, amazing glass. It's a little bit of a shame that lens manufacturers, camera manufacturers, they prioritize, you know, making these like, well, if it's a more expensive lens, we got to have it be heavier, heftier, and have a really wide open aperture. I would love a manufacturer to just make a bunch of like f8, f11, even like fixed aperture lenses that are just like so weightless and take great photos, but just don't have a lot of options. Another is only ever thinking about landscape spots in like the Faroe Islands, in Iceland, in Utah, in these beautiful places that, you know, everybody goes to and they all get basically the same shot. I think it's important, and I've talked about this before, to find some local spots that you can spend time in, you can get to know, and you really have a good idea of what kind of shots you can get there that are unique to you, because there aren't really any other people going there. And the last, I'll just touch on this a little bit, I've talked about this before, is being comfortable while you're taking photos. I can't speak enough about just how much me personally, my creativity just drops the moment that I get uncomfortable. Too hot, too cold, if I'm extremely tired, if I'm sitting on something uncomfortable, if I'm contorting my body in order to try to get this shot, it becomes mechanical, becomes something like a little bit like an assembly line, and the photos are just not as good. I find the ones where I really can think about the place that I'm at and again, be creative. Those ones, they always come out just a little bit more special. Maybe that's just me, maybe that's something different, but you don't need to prioritize this perfect shot. What you need to prioritize is working on your craft, working the locations that you have, and making really good shots that are unique to you. The last little bit that I want to talk about is getting stuck into doing the things you're supposed to. I'm talking landscape photography requires f8 to f11. I'm talking ISO 100. And I'm thinking about, like, you know, there was a time in my photography career when I was polarizing every single shot, and I stopped doing that because at some point they started to look kind of weird, and I realized polarization isn't really required. And then I got into focus stacking everything, and now I'm doing that less and less because I'm realizing that it's kind of screwing up the sense of depth that you get in your photos, and it's not all that great. So you have to abandon these things. You have to think about them. It's really good to learn these rules and sort of try different stuff, but you really need to consider what it is that you're doing and explore all the different options of what your camera, what your photography can do, because otherwise you're making sacrifices more than you are making decisions, and sacrificing will absolutely ruin your photos. Well, that's it for me. Thanks very much for watching. Bye for now.